Join me as I unearth some of the root causes behind the increase in attacks against Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic. Stay tuned. I'm Kim Smith of WKIM-TV, and this is episode number 3 of The COVID Effect, where we discuss how society at large has changed as a result of COVID-19.
A shooting rampage at 3 spas in the Atlanta metro area Tuesday, leaving 8 people dead and 1 wounded. Police apprehending one suspect, 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long of Woodstock, Georgia. Law enforcement saying that video evidence suggests that it's extremely likely that the same person is responsible for all 3 shootings.
We do have some witnesses that were in the location or around the location. It is extreme priority for us.
We just heard numerous gunshots coming from across the street. I won't say any names, but they're really nice girls. They just do great massages. They do great massages over here, so it's just unfortunate.
Authorities tell the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that 6 of the victims were Asian women. Police said they had no immediate indication of a motive for the shootings.
The FBI is assisting local law enforcement with the investigation. This was interesting tonight. The FBI director, Chris Wray, told NPR, quote, "It does not appear that the motive was racially motivated."
Investigators in Georgia say it's still not clear whether racist hate was behind the murders there, detailing that the suspect, Robert Aaron Long, told them he acted out in distress over a sexual addiction.
As the FBI and local law enforcement continue their investigation to identify the motive of this horrific massacre, unfortunately, there are some in mainstream media that deem it appropriate to engage in divisive rhetoric by comparing the Asian massacre juxtaposed to similar atrocities that have occurred within the Black church or a synagogue.
The suspect claims the shootings were not racially motivated, and that's what investigators told us today. They said that's what he says. But 6 of the 8 victims were Asian women, period. These were Asian massage parlors. I mean, Lisa, if this were any other minority group that were targeted in a shooting spree, would there be this hesitancy?
Well, that's the question that we're all asking. I mean, Aaron, when you think about it, if this were a synagogue or a Black church, there wouldn't be a question.
In order to get a bit more context, let's review some things that occurred in 2020 and work our way back up to 2021.
Now, the Kung Fu legend's family are the ones fighting. They say everything Bruce Lee stood for is under attack after this comment from President Trump.
I can name Kung Flu.
My father was, among other things, a humanitarian, and he believed in unity and treating all people the same. And these comments are making people have more anti-Asian attacks and sentiments out in the public, and it's making people unsafe.
I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus.
Do you think using the term Chinese virus, that puts Asian Americans at risk, that people might
No,
target
not at all.
them?
We don't want you here. That's why we elected President Trump.
That was Wednesday, February 3rd, and about 8 o'clock, I was at the L train. I stood there quietly. A man came and stood beside me. He started kicking my bag. He came towards me. I thought he's going to punch me, but when I didn't feel anything, I saw his hand with a boxer cutter. I shouted for help, but nobody helped me.
Hate, fear, xenophobic, racist, divisive rhetoric are some of the root causes associated with the increase of Asian attacks during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We were flooded with incidents of harassment, of physical assault, of being spat and coughed upon. But the majority, about 90%, were actually cases of verbal harassment, discrimination. But they're not microaggressions. They're pretty horrific, traumatizing incidents where people get yelled at, have profanities and racial epithets slung at them, And they've targeted a lot of what we are saying are vulnerable populations. The elderly and children are attacked more often than young people, for instance, and women are harassed 2.4 times more than men.
Although Donald Trump's xenophobic rhetoric is believed to be one of the major driving forces behind the increased attacks against Asian Americans, he's not responsible for the long-standing practice of naming a pandemic after the country of origin. And while we're clarifying misconceptions, check out this Vox article that details how African Americans are being blamed for the predominant number of Asian attacks, when in actuality, the data does not substantiate that narrative.
We're still working very diligently and to ascertain all the facts so we can have a successful prosecution.
Is the investigation into a possible hate crime, is that still on the table?
Nothing is off the table for our investigation.
He is currently in our facility at the Cherokee County Adult Detention Center. We were able to interview him with the Atlanta Police Department and the FBI. He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction, and may have frequented some of these places in the past. But as the chief indicated, it's still early on. We still have a lot of things to process.
The suspect did take responsibility for the shootings. He said that early on once we began the interviews with him. He claims that these, and as the chief said, this is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated. He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate.
As the investigation continues, and whatever the findings may be, we must be mindful to keep the family and loved ones of the 8 shooting victims in our prayers. We will end this video with a word from President Biden.
Hate and violence often hide in plain sight. It's often met with silence. That's been true throughout our history. But that has to change, because our silence is complicity. We cannot be complicit. We have to speak out. We have to act. So my heart goes out to all the family members who lost someone in those horrific shootings on Tuesday.